Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We are at the 78th Vyakhyaan of Vyakhyaan Series 2.0, and today we have a very senior professor from IIM Ahmedabad who will be talking to us on demystifying leadership. And to initiate and welcome, I request our director, Dr. Bhardwaj, to kindly come and welcome.
Namaskar. Yem Cho. Adabars. A very good afternoon. आप सभी का PRL के अमृत व्याख्यान में स्वागत है, अभिनंदन है. A very warm welcome from me, Anil Bhardwaj, for PRL का अमृत व्याख्यान. Today is the 78th व्याख्यान of the series of व्याख्याns which started 2.5 years back. And today is the third व्याख्यान of the PRL का अमृत व्याख्यान 2.0. which is now a monthly Vyakhyaan, and earlier it used to be a weekly Vyakhyaan. And this Vyakhyaan series is essentially meant for celebrating the Platinum Jubilee of PRL, and also as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which we celebrate the 75 years of our independence. So today we have another very distinguished Vyakhyaan Karta with us today, Professor Asha Kaul, who is a professor at Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. And she is going to talk to us on demystifying leadership. This is a very demystifying topic, and we all eagerly look forward to hearing from her how leadership can be demystified. So we greatly appreciate and thank Professor Asha Kaul for accepting our invitation and to be with us today at this Vyakhyaan series and the third Vyakhyaan, the third monthly Vyakhyaan, and the 70th PRL Community Vyakhyaan. And I would now request our colleague, Professor Shubhavati Goswami, to kindly introduce the speaker to all of us and to all the audience who have joined us live on the PRL's YouTube channel. So with this, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation once again and to be with us today. So over to you, Professor Shubhavati.
Thank you, Professor Bharadwaj, and very good afternoon to all the audience and the viewers. So it's an absolutely pleasure for me to introduce Professor Asha Kaul, who is a professor in the communication area at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. She completed her PhD from IIT Kanpur in the area of stylistics in 1990. Since then, she has been working in the area of communication, teaching, and publishing. Almost a decade back, she included in her specific research portfolio corporate reputation, social media communication, and leadership through literature. She has many books, cases, and papers to her credit in these areas. Currently, she is focusing on leadership lessons through Mahabharata and writing of cases on companies in different sectors, which will give her higher access to functioning of organizations. She is also on the board of companies and academic institutions. Today, she will discuss with us on her book on leadership lessons through Mahabharata. And, personally, I interacted with her because we had called her for our Women's Day celebration. And during a personal crisis for which she could not come, the kind of professionalism that she showed, I really felt a lot of respect for her for that. Thank you very much. And over to you, Professor Kaul.
Yeah, it's working. Thanks to all of you for coming and joining me to listen to this talk on demystifying leadership. This is going to be based on a book which I've written with Professor Vishal Gupta and got published. And it is right now a passion with me, right? How do you really understand leadership through Mahabharat? Before I start getting on to leadership lessons, I'd just like to share something with you. See, every time we talk about Mahabharat, the first thought that comes to the mind is it is a dharmic. If it is a dharmic, how do you really draw your leadership lessons from Mahabharat? So let's proceed and then we can take a look. This is the I just like to play this little clip for you all.
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम् धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे.
So, what does this really mean? मैं प्रकट होता हूँ, मैं आता हूँ, जब जब धर्म की हानि होती है, तब तब मैं आता हूँ. जब जब अधर्म बढ़ता है, तब तब मैं आता हूँ. सच रक्षा के लिए मैं आता हूँ, दुष्ट नाश करने के लिए मैं आता हूँ, धर्म की स्थापना के लिए मैं आता हूँ और युग युग में जन्म लेता हूँ. So this is what Krishna said. So what we are seeing is anything that could be a dharmic, because of all that's going on in that particular text, Krishna comes so that he would be able to establish dharma once again. So, whenever we talk about Mahabharata, there are a lot of things that come to the mind, and people start talking about the characters. People talk about a Bhishma Pitama, they talk about a Krishna, they talk about Draupadi, Kunti, and so on and so forth. But I think what's important for us to understand is how did Mahabharata come into existence? किसी ने तो उसको लिखा होगा, and I think that is where we would be able to understand what is it that we would like to cull from this itihas. It is referred to as itihas, which is history. Way back, I don't even know the years when, we had our sages and they would talk to the people and they would talk about the human soul and the yearning for the human soul. And what they did was they divided people into four kind of castes: Brahmins, Vaishyas, Shudra, and Kshatriyas, right? And it was all inextricably linked to one another, and life was supposed to be cyclical. So everything was going on in a very smooth kind of way. And then there was a drought on Saraswati, which lasted for 14 years. Everything went for a toss. And that's the time when people were running helter and skelter. When things started coming back to Ved Vyas, a fisherwoman's son, he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revive all the things that were there in the hymns, right? So he got together and he said, okay, let me have all the four Vedas. But he said, one is not going to remember the hymns. So what one needs to do is one needs to have a human story. So even God's agreed to it. And he said, I want a scribe, a person who's going to write everything. And God said, Ganesh. And Ganesh, he comes over there and he says, even if you stop for a second, stop writing. So Vedya thinks through it and he says, okay, you will only write what you understand. So Ganesh agreed to it. And then he would throw in bits and pieces which would absolutely confuse, you see, so that he could come up with a story. Initially, when this text was written, it was referred to as Jaya, which means victory. It was only 8,800 shlokas long. Gradually, it grew in size and became Bharata Samhita. It was approximately 24,000 shlokas in size. Right now, it is the unabridged version is 100,000 shlokas and took 1,000 years to write. Initially, what started with ideas, as a concept, I want to share my ideas with you, gradually moved to people. The focus on people, and that is why Mahabharata is important for us. But it does not lose the original concept of ideas. So the reason as to why I gave you this little narrative was it has ideas, ideas of what a good life should be, ideas of how life should be lived. But then people are also there. And if people are going to be there, there's going to be love, hate, envy, passion, you name it, any one of the emotions. And what becomes then important is how do you demonstrate leadership where these people are concerned? In fact, Vivek Dev Roy, it's very interesting, he says, dharma ki to bahut definitions, there are many definitions of dharma. Everyone in Mahabharata is right or everyone is wrong. Everyone lives life as per their own dharma. Then who do we say is right? Are the Pandavas right? Are the Kauravas right? Was Bhishma Pitama right? Was Shakuni right? It's your karma which decides what is actually right or what is actually wrong. So having given you this background, what I intend doing is, Mahabharata, you all would have also heard this story many times, and maybe some people have also talked to you about leadership. I'm also going to superimpose on Mahabharata something that has also been said by Sun Tzu. We already talked about this. It's not moving. Sun Tzu was a 6th century BC military philosopher who wrote The Art of War. The best leadership lessons are there in the book, which if we apply to leadership in Mahabharata, it helps us move forward in just the right kind of way. There are a lot of things that Sun Tzu has talked about. But what is important is he created a rubric for leadership. And he said that it should contain the 4 characteristics of strictness, trustworthiness, knowledge, and courage. Let's see whether it's there in Mahabharata or not, because it's said about Mahabharata. Anything that's happening in the world will be in Mahabharata. And anything that's not there in Mahabharata would not be happening in the world. So, to bring about a kind of superimposition of these principles on Mahabharata, let's take a look at some of the characters. I'd like to begin with Bhishma Pitama. But before we go on to Bhishma Pitama, I'd just like to share a small anecdote with you. The mic is not working? Is the mic working? Yeah. So recently I was in Bodh Gaya to do a Pindadan. So anyone who's done a Pindadan you all understand, right? So it's a kind of puja that you do for someone who's no more there with you, so that God blesses the soul and the soul achieves moksha or nirvana or whatever you want. So at the end of the puja, the Pandit looks at me and he says, your last dhan that you're going to do is going to be for Bhishma Pitama. First, I thought I hadn't heard correct. I thought I'd probably taught Bhishma Pitama too frequently and I could only hear his name in my head. The Pandit again looked at me and he said, won't you go ahead and do it? I said, of course, I'll do it. I asked him, why? He said, he was a man who didn't have a family. He was a man who sacrificed everything that was there. Everyone now today is his grandchild. So anyone who comes over here to Bodh Gaya should do a pindan for Bhishma Pitama. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story, when he's lying on that shayya of arrows, and he's trying to talk about dharma to the Pandavas, Draupadi comes and she stands over there and she laughs. Who's this man? Is he a leader? Has he demonstrated leadership traits? What is it that he's done right? What is it that we can emulate? Why do we refer to him as Pitama? You know, he comes on stage and he says, very young boy, I will not marry. I will not beget a child. And that's when the gods are so happy that his name changes from Devavrata to Bhishma. But together with that, he also makes another statement, which is also his undoing. He says, I will adhere to my fiduciary responsibility. What are the consequences? And these are just 3 stories from Bhishma Pitama's life. You know, there are multiple stories how he kind of prisoned Shakuni and his entire brothers. I'm sure you're all aware of the fact Shakuni and his other brothers made a complete 100. That was the number. So he imprisoned them. There were many other things. He could have stopped the war if he wanted. Krishna goes to him and he says, what have you done? If you wanted, you could have stopped the war. If he wanted, he could have stopped the chain haran of Draupadi. Still, we refer to him as Bhishma Pitama. Now, what are the consequences when you are in a leadership position? For some time, I have veered away from leaders to leadership positions. Right? You know, you may decide to take certain decisions which you think are needed for that position. It doesn't really demonstrate your leadership traits. The consequences of Bhishma Pitama's, all these, statements that he makes. Kingdom was run by a blind king. Kul Vadhu was disrobed. The 18 days war happened. Everyone was killed. And Kurukshetra laid bare with corpses, which lay over there for the vultures to eat. I'm not saying that it was all Bhishma Pitama's fault. What I'm trying to say is he could have prevented this, but somehow he did not. And there's certain questions when you start taking a look at leaders and leadership. Why was he feared more than revered? You know, what is important for a leader is the fear element should not be there. There should be more, a respect. But he was feared more than he was revered. His legitimacy, it was not moral. Was it pragmatic? Was it pragmatic or was it moral? You'll have to think for yourself. So everyone would have a different answer. We are not trying to look for right answers. We are trying to get our thinking activated is legal responsibility. I took an oath when I was 14 or 16. More important than your moral or pragmatic responsibility. Take peace. The fears, the fearful lose his credibility, his legitimacy, and his trustworthiness. Did that happen? He even tells the Pandavas the way in which he's going to die. The Pandavas go weeping to him and they say, Dadu or grandfather, we can't win the war till you're alive. You can't win the war. Very honest, very truthful. And he gives them the secret as to how he can be killed. Some leadership lessons that we can draw from the life of Bhishma Pitama. Each one of us has to develop a moral compass. It will tell us what is right, what is wrong. I cannot proceed by something which people talk about as being ethical. Morals are mine. Ethics is what society creates. Legitimacy is not a fixed variable. Try to understand, that's your pragmatic understanding, your Kulvad who needs you right now. The war has to be stopped right now. You cannot, if you've taken on the side of the Kauravas, you cannot give the Pandavas the secret for your death. Pragmatic legitimacy. And that's where Krishna scored over all these people. Plan and act flexibly. Don't be rigid in whatever you're trying to do. Don't be stubborn. But what you need to do is you need to adapt to change. Remember, you as a leader, or what does leadership entail? It entails accountability. It entails that you be committed. Good leaders hold themselves accountable. And all of this is undergirded by integrity and trust. We talk a lot about knowledge. You know, everyone should have knowledge, and that's what puts you in the leadership position. No, it's not that alone. If you take a look at Ashwatthama, son of Dronacharya, intelligent man. He was one of the few people in the court who knew the Vedas. He was one of the few people who objected to Draupadi being disrobed. But then, you know, there was something which was more than knowledge, which was eating him up. Was it position? Was it power? I will kill the sleeping Pandavas. Equity. I will be the next general. See a lot of young people sitting over there. Ambition, desire, without it being rooted in a moral integrity, can create a problem. I will kill the unborn child of Abhimanyu. What are the consequences? If anyone goes to Himalayas and you see a man moving around with pus oozing out, that's your Ashwatthama. He was abandoned and left alone. Cursed by Krishna. Right? The jewel on his forehead was taken away and there's pus and blood flowing from there. You know, what happens is when you start talking about leadership, I'd like to draw your attention to this little framework that we've come up with. You know, there are external events that shape your thoughts, and that's what happened with Ashwatthama. You know, he was Brahmin with a desire to be a Kshatriya, with a desire to be, you know, something which is not possible, at least in the society of those days. So there are external events that shape your thoughts. Thoughts which give rise to emotions. Oh, I'm the best. I can do this. I will achieve this. And what are the emotions? I want to suppress anything and anyone who comes in my way. There's anger, there's aggression, there's a kind of restlessness and disturbance within me. And then I take certain actions. Actions go and kill the sleeping Pandavas, yeah? I mean, this is just not acceptable. So it is a vicious cycle. But what we need to do is there has to be mindfulness and appreciation of inquiry. That's your breakpoint one. Your breakpoint two is action regulation. Pause, think, regulate your actions. That is what is going to demonstrate leadership traits. Here we have a lady. Knowledge and wisdom. Remember, since we talked about these points. Was she wise? I don't know. Did she have knowledge? Yes. She was also wise. In the right way or in the wrong way, we can debate that later on. When Arjun gets Draupadi, and she thinks he's got some arms. Without even turning back, she says, distribute it amongst yourselves. There's a very interesting point that a lot of my students have always raised. Ma, couldn't she have turned back and couldn't she have said, I take back my words? Yes, she could have. But she saw a look in the eyes of all her other sons and she realized on the spur of the moment, this woman is going to keep all the brothers together. Very wise lady. She doesn't want to take the onus on herself. And she looks at Yudhishthir and she says, you know, you have a lot of knowledge. You see there's a precedence. Of course, Yudhishthir was interested in Draupadi. And you know, that's one of the advantages of research. If you're interested in something, you'll always find someone else who's done work on that. Gives you a precedence. And that's what happened where Yudhishthir is concerned. And so Draupadi became the wife of all five of them. She goes to Karn. Now this man, you know, I quite like this person, but of course he also has his faults. Remember, Mahabharat is Itihas. It's not, we're not talking about Ram, who's perfect. All throughout, this man is looking to be owned by someone. She doesn't go to him. It's only when she wants the war not to happen. And Krishna goes and tells her, go, woman, go. She goes to him at a time when he's just finished his prayers to the sun. And it was said that Karn, after he would do his puja, Surya puja karnete the, he would never ever refuse anyone. And he promises her, you'll always have 5 sons. She says, she tells Madhuri, I will not give her a boon. She tells her husband, Pandu, I will not give her a boon more than once. Because Madhuri's already had 2 sons. She's worried. But she's not power hungry towards the end. When Yudhishthir becomes the king, she leaves everything and she goes to the forest with her Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Vidur. She doesn't want to stay over there. She doesn't want to act like a queen mother. She's done what she wanted to do. I see a lot of men sitting here, so I don't know whether I should be making this statement, but I do so want to make this statement. Women normally are supposed to be very good with A, multitasking, B, being able to understand emotions, understand people all around them. C, they also have a lot of intuitive power. Having said that, It doesn't mean that men do not have these traits. Women have it in abundance. So no surprise that we have Kunti who has all these traits. So what is the consequence? All the 5 brothers stood united. She at least made an attempt to stop the war. She always had the upper hand, and the Pandavas won the war. If she would have been able to persuade Karan, and if she would have got him to her side, the war wouldn't even have begun at that time. She tried. At least she tried. She wasn't successful. She's human, yeah. She's human. Don't forget that. She failed. But that's all right. At least the attempt was done. Who else apart from Krishna made that attempt to stop the war? Krishna knew what's going to happen. Krishna knew what's going to happen. Shakuni knew what's going to happen. Any person in Mahabharat who was as intelligent as Krishna was Shakuni, we'll talk about that later on. So let's take a look at, the leadership traits demonstrated by Kunti. See, culture and leader behaviors, both the things are equally important. When we talk about vision, when we talk about values, when we talk about culture, we are actually talking about a learning and growth mindset. We are talking about positivity. We are talking about enjoyment, fairness, and autonomy. And by jolly, Kunti demonstrated each one of these traits. Leader behavior. It's very interesting. I'll show you that quote later on, but I think I need to talk to you about it. It's been said in the military, mission always, people first. What we are really talking about is, if you are in a leadership position or if you're a leader, you need to have task orientation. But more important than task orientation is relation orientation, team building, empowering. To have the authenticity. If you have the authenticity where people believe in you, Bhishma Pitama had authenticity. I don't think anyone in Mahabharat would have equal the authenticity that he was able to demonstrate. But relation orientation, not so sure. Empowering, again, not so sure. He took everything upon himself. Kunti did not do that. She was able to lie low and yet be able to give her sons the required push. Now, some questions after having discussed Ashwatthama and Kunti. We took a look at knowledge where Ashwatthama is concerned. We took a look at knowledge and wisdom where Kunti is concerned. And we add another dimension, that is humility. What should knowledge be coupled? All of you are sitting here at PRL. I assume all of you are very good with the intellectual acumen. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Knowledge in itself needs to be coupled with something introspective. What is it that you have? Does knowledge preempt arrogance, or can it be merged with personal humility? Remember what Chanakya said. Straight trees are cut first. If there's arrogance, your tree is going to be the first tree that's going to be cut. What may be some of the alternative ways of achieving victory instead of brute force alone? When I talk about victory in whichever sphere you're working, which is most effective, knowledge alone, or knowledge with brute force, or knowledge without brute force, or knowledge with wisdom and humility? Ashwatthama had knowledge with brute force, and you know where he ended. So the lessons from these two characters, knowledge alone will not suffice. Develop wisdom of soft power. It could be diplomatic, it could be informational and economic. Think in multiple dimensions, like cooking. Right? Time, politics, terrain, space, power, what we refer to as a VUCA environment. Gain support from people. Use intelligence with foreknowledge and flexibility to adapt and adopt. Here comes his character, one of my favorite characters. Surya comes to him and says, son, Indra is going to come to you and ask you for your Kavach and Kundala. Don't give it to him. He looks at his father and he says, nonchalant attitude. He looks at his father and he says, without my Kavach and Kundal, I can still fight off my enemies. He goes to Duryodhan and says, you have given me kingship and I owe you my life. Oof. Do not worry, he tells Kunti, you will always have 5 sons, either Arjun or I will be killed. This is courage, but without pragmatism, without really taking a look at the ground realities. Consequences, he was killed in the battlefield. It's pathetic, but it's said the day he was killed, the sun set much earlier. And Kunti's veils were the kind of just were unbearable. For once, she was able to cry for her son. He was shunned by the Pandavas. And he did not, because of these kind of, I can do this, I can achieve this, I owe this to this person. He could not get the lineage for which he thirsted throughout his life. Some questions for us to probe. When does courage become a foolhardy approach? I can do this, I can achieve this, I can reach that point. Wait, are you being pragmatic? Can risk be mitigated by demonstration of courage and courage alone? No. You need more things. What are the associated challenges with demonstration of courage without assessment of ground realities? You become unpragmatic. You're not able to see beyond your nose. That can be the undoing. This mostly happens when there's an identity conflict and our moral integrity is being questioned. For identity formation, we have a natural self and we have an ego self-driven. For us to form this identity, there is a personal and role-based identity and social group-based identity. Something which I've created, something which society has given. But the identity formation in itself is not complete. It needs to move to some kind of moral integrity. If it's not integrity, it may just end up in moral hypocrisy. Karn, to a great extent, also demonstrated moral hypocrisy. So, what are the things that are important for identity formation and for there to be moral integrity? We need to be aware of the consequences. What's going to happen if I decide to take this particular action? Am I able to understand other people? Is there humility in whatever I'm trying to do? Have I been able to move ahead? with the right kind of data-based decision. Some lessons from the life of courage. Courage alone will not suffice. Resolve the identity conflict, move towards moral integrity, know your competencies, your environment, and your foes. Strike only when victory is assured. Be pragmatic rather than foolhardy. Here in history, if you just take a look, there have been many kings, many rulers who just decided to move ahead. Neither look to the left nor look to the right, and they said, move, move, move. Then there were other leaders also who thought through the situation and decided to move ahead in a certain way, and victory was definitely theirs. Here we come to this character, but before we get on to this character, I would just like to share a few points. I knew we would not have the time, but it's important for me to discuss Shakuni, where leadership is concerned. And then probably we can start moving on to Krishna. So when we talk about Shakuni, it is said that Shakuni is or was the only character in Mahabharat who could be equated to Krishna. If you start taking a look at Shakuni, he was a perfect team leader. If you take a look at the Kauravas, right? And the way in which he managed the Kauravas, the way in which he got Yudhishthir onto the dice table, it's just unimaginable. And everyone, he was like a Pied Piper, and everyone seemed to be following Shakuni. But still, whenever we talk about Shakuni, it's never ever in a positive way. But when we talk about Krishna Bhagwan, what is important? What is important in leadership is also the final goal. What are you moving towards? Krishna was not moving towards any personal goal else in mind. But when you take a look at Shakuni, what was the basic reason as to why he behaved the way he did? I don't know how many of you are aware of the story of Shakuni and his brothers being kept in prison by Bhishma Pitama. All because someone had predicted, a sage had predicted, that Gandhari's husband is going to die. These people kept it a secret and they said, let's get her married off to a tree. And there's another school of thought which says to a goat. So first husband would die and then she would live a happy life. But she became a widow. And a widow was married to Dhritarashtra. When Bhishma got to hear of it, he imprisoned all of them. 100 boys. Now you can't kill your daughter-in-law's family people. So every day, these people would get 1 grain of rice. And everyone said it's not sufficient for sustenance. So what we are going to do is we'll give it to the most intelligent of the lot. And that happened to be Shakuni. So everyone died. Shakuni survived. But before his father died, he kicked him on the shin and said, you will limp throughout life, but every time you limp, you will remember you have a revenge to take. Shakuni, whatever he was doing, it was not for the Kauravas, it was for the Kuru clan. He wanted to take revenge. The cause is absolutely different. He also was not desirous of any kind of power. We'll not get into those stories. But the point is, the ultimate goal, what are you really moving towards? And that's what makes a world of difference. If you can cognize that, then you're moving ahead in this the right kind of way. So here we have Krishna principled pragmatism. He's not just being pragmatic, but it's principled. He comes and he says, I will not fight or pick up arms against the enemy. And he makes this statement, but anyone who remembers Mahabharat would remember when Arjuna is dilly-dallying and he's not willing to kill Bhishma, what does Krishna do? He just jumps onto the battlefield. Principled pragmatism. You are only the means to give shape to what is destined. He tells Arjuna that. Ashwatthama is dead. Yet anyone would say, imagine a lie coming from Krishna and a lie coming from Yudhishthir. It's one of the most important questions in an ethics class. Can you lie and still say you are moral? Think through it. The consequences of it, he beguiles the opponent. Arjun is influenced to pick up arms against his family, and Dronacharya, one of the kingpins, is killed. Drishtadyumna just jumps onto the battlefield when Dronacharya is mourning for his still alive son because Yudhishthir told a lie. And this is all at the behest of Krishna. Now, when we take a look at this Krishna, we have to keep in mind that you can't only move in the direction of ends, which are equally important. We've been talking about legitimacy. Keep one thing in mind. Legitimacy is both moral as well as pragmatic. You cannot say that I shun pragmatism, right? But I'm going to be moral. You can't do that. Principled pragmatism helps in achieving the final goal and achieving your goal as well. So in leadership, you would realize there's an organizational goal and there's your goal. To what extent do the two converge? Victory comes from pursuance of both vision and mission. And mission gets accomplished by taking care of people. And Krishna knew how to take care of the people on whose side he was. People first, mission always. Mission will always be there, it will always be challenging. But taking care of people is key to ensuring that the mission gets accomplished. So, what is principled pragmatism? The foundation for it is you need to have a purpose. You need to have an ethical purpose. The first is, what are the ethical principles created by society, created by the organization under which you operate? The second pillar, what is the character and relationships that you would like to demonstrate as alternatives to principles? The third pillar is pragmatism and moral courage. Don't shy when there's a decision that needs to be taken and you're convinced that the decision is absolutely right. And the fourth pillar is, we talked about the consequences, the outcomes. Be aware of the outcomes of your actions. And this is what Krishna demonstrated. When the war ends and he goes to the battlefield, Draupadi is sitting with all her 100 sons and she's crying. And she looks at Krishna and she says, if you wanted, you would have stopped the war. The most interesting thing in Mahabharat is everyone tells the other person, if you wanted, you would have stopped the war. But still, no one volunteered. She curses Krishna, right? Krishna knows what's going to be the outcome. Krishna knows what are going to be the consequences. But he goes on through life with the same kind of courage, the same kind of leadership that he demonstrated during Mahabharat. So with that, when he started, we had that little the shlok from Bhagavad Gita, which we played. So Krishna came to remove a dharma so that dharma could be there. And what is dharma? Dharma is nothing else but adhering to knowledge. So on that note, I would like to close. Thank you so much for being there. All the best.
Thank you, Professor Kaul. It was a fascinating talk. In fact, I came across a very fantastic line that leadership is not an action, is an action, not a position. And this talk is the best example to understand that. The floor is open for the question and answer, and we invite questions from the audience, and then we'll take up the YouTube questions. The questions from the audience.
Thought, Professor Asha, for putting into perspective, getting examples from how a leader behaves towards action. You did mention about one point and related to the trust. No, sorry, the Pandavas, particularly related to telling a lie. And it was says that Dronacharya was told that skill. How do you justify that?
No, I don't justify it at all. I don't justify it at all. Right? And but if you want to take a look at it from the point of view, all's fair in love and war. And I think that is the principle on which Krishna operated. That all's fair in love and war, and he was being very pragmatic about it, because if Dronacharya would have been alive, he would have killed more and more of the Pandavas. And they wanted all these kingpins to be removed one after another. In fact, the question that you've asked me, Professor Bharadwaj, it's a question related to ethics. Was it ethical? Was it not? Because what Dronacharya does, and then together with that, see, I'm a teacher, and the relationship between a teacher and a student is something, of trust. And that's what Dronacharya says. I'll go to my student. Yudhishthira never tells a lie. So maybe the need of the hour was to have Dronacharya out. And that is what exactly happened.
Maybe.
I don't justify it.
Okay. What I was told, I don't know if it is correct or not. The story which was told to me is that Krishna actually killed an elephant.
Yeah.
Whose name was
Ashwatthama. That's right.
And then he told Yudhishthira that you tell it. And the moment Yudhishthira was telling, yes, Ashwatthama is killed, but the elephant. The last part was so dull, and everybody was, putting so much of
Shells were blown at that time.
Right.
She says, when Dronacharya comes and asks him, Ashwatthama, my son, he says, I don't know whether it was an elephant or your son. And that's the time when Krishna blows all the conch shells. No one can hear.
Right. So he did not tell a lie. He was telling, yes, Ashwatthama is killed, but elephant. But elephant part is taken away by the sounds being heard. And Dronacharya only heard that Ashwatthama is killed.
So Bharadwaj, you raised a very interesting point. So now I think I need to go a little in communication. We normally talk about the intent of the sender. Words in themselves mean nothing. Yudhishthira knew Ashwatthama was killed, and this was a ploy. This was a ploy which had been, created by Krishna. His intent should have been to go to the teacher and tell him the truth, but that was not the intent. So words camouflaged the intent of the sender. So that is something that we would need to keep in mind. And I don't think history will ever be able to forgive Yudhishthira for that.
But on the other side, if you look, He did not tell a lie. He was telling a complete sentence, but somebody is not hearing the complete sentence and taking a decision in between.
Professor Bhardwaj, we need to do it in one whole session, whether he was right or he was not right. I told you, this is a major question in ethics, whether he was right or he was not right. You raised a very pertinent issue, very pertinent issue. And I think this is something, this issue related to ethics is what leaders confront almost every day. And how do you manage that is the question. So I don't have an answer to that, right? But it is subject for a lot of debate.
In fact, what I know from the story is that Yudhishthira said, Narova Kunjrova. The Nar, ya Aswathama mara gaya ya Kunj, that is elephant. I don't know.
And that's a time when you can't share.
Now in the conscience.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhushan.
Yeah. And it-
Please.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for your beautiful talk. I have a question. Like, how much truth is the story of Mahabharata? It can be a fictional story also, right? Which people have exaggerated over time. Like some incident might have taken place 5,000 years back, and over time, people have exaggerated it to the point we know now. Like, it can be entirely a fictional story also, right?
That's a brilliant point. See, when Vedas, he started writing, and that's why I give you the narrative right at the beginning. So he said the hymns of the Vedas will not be remembered. So what is important is we need to have a human narrative around it. So he started writing, and he started writing with, all these issues that will be there with people he knew. Now, people he knew, and he did it, it was only 8,800 shlokas. But when it became 100,000 shlokas, right, we have no idea whether there's truth in it or not. But if you go to Kurukshetra, they always tell you that, these were the weapons that were used, right? And this is where the battle took place. So you have those things in Kurukshetra, but very difficult to validate whether it happened or not. But what is for sure, maybe the war is not going to happen now, but we are supposed to extrapolate all that happened, and you would be able to see a parallel in today's world, because we are not talking about what happened or the actions that were taken. We are talking about deeper inner emotions where people are concerned. So if you will take a look just a bit deeper, there's love, there's hate, there's envy, Ashwadhama.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We'll go to Shubhamati ma'am.
So, you mentioned 4 qualities: strictness, trustworthiness, knowledge, and courage. So, I was wondering about compassion. Is it included in trustworthiness?
These were Sun Tzu's rubric. So Sun Tzu doesn't talk about compassion, but he does talk about compassion under leadership. So now that you've asked me, right, it's a beautiful story that goes, because we also had Kunti teamwork. So there's a beautiful story that goes in Sun Tzu's Art of War, and it almost gives you the goosebumps. So Sun Tzu one day describes a woman sitting in the forest, and she's wailing, and everyone comes to her and says, "Why are you crying?" She says, "My son has been admitted to Sun Tzu's army." Everyone looks at her and says, "So what's there to cry? Your husband was also in Sun Tzu's army." She says, "Yes, and that's why I'm crying. One day what happened, my husband was going to the forest and a snake bit him. Sun Tzu happened to be passing by. He saw my husband writhe in pain. He sucked the pus with his mouth. My husband was saved, but I lost him to Sun Tzu for life." And she says, "Today also my son, who's been admitted to Sun Tzu's army, nothing's going to happen to him, but I've lost him." So we are talking about, there's a strictness, and there are many stories. If you take a look at Art of War, so strictness is there, yes. But as a rubric that he creates, these are the only 4 things, but he does talk about compassion as well. Compassion, that's a wonderful point. It's important because when we're talking about people first, compassion has to be there. Thank you so much.
So,
Madam, just a small thing. How justified Dronacharya was asking the right hand thumb of the club here? Please.
Not at all. Not at all. He asks that as Guru Dakshina. Guru Dakshina when you talk, disseminate knowledge that you've been able to gather. That's Guru Dakshina. But us zamane mein, if you just take a look, gurus happen to be, those poor people who used to stay in huts. So Guru Dakshina was always monetary, was always something which is tangible. Right? Now, in that, when did Dronacharya move ahead and ask for the thumb? Maybe he sensed competition.
One can be better Dhanurdhar than Arjun, his Shishya. And at that point of time, Eklavya was having more knowledge and more Dhanurdhar than Arjun. So just to keep his word should be up, just whatever I heard.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And that's why when I talk about the Pandavas or when I talk about the characters, I don't bring in Arjun. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Teacher loved him, grandfather loved him, everyone loved him. So life was easy. Krishna loved him, Draupadi loved him. Who did not love him? But then he did not undergo the same level of struggles that the other characters went through. No, that's not right on the part of Dronacharya. The only excuse that you can give him is, after all, he's also human. There was this time in jealousy, right, kind of permeated Dronacharya. He did not like Eklavya. He was scared his own Shishya would be shown in a bad light. And he knew he had the power to get, not ask, to get what he had asked for. So he went ahead. So this is, again, you move ahead without taking a look at the externalities. In fact, this becomes important, especially in the VUCA world, where you have to take a look at all the uncertainties, the complexities, the ambiguities, and then volatility in the environment, and then you need to move ahead. Great question. Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Good evening. Thank you for this talk. So actually, when we are in a decision-taking position, when we are in sort of a leadership position, we might have to do some things which are more for our reputation, for establishing the reputation rather than like sometimes we have to take a decision which we might know inside that we are wrong, but we take those decisions despite knowing that they are wrong, but to maintain our reputation that if we would have done otherwise, it might tarnish my reputation, suppose in my colleagues or in my employees. But in my mind, I know it is wrong. So what is right at that point? To take the correct decision or to take the decision which protects me per se as a position holder?
Things. Because you've talked about reputation, which is my current research area. So you're going to be careful if I catch you after the class and I'll start talking to you about reputation management. Right. But let's go on to the next point. When you start talking about decisions and how our decisions should be taken, I have a very simple point I always tell everyone. And if you were to believe, if you can look at your own eyes in the mirror after you've taken a decision, the decision is wrong. Otherwise, don't take a decision. Then it's only a question of reputation management. It's intangible. And people also, when you start talking about reputation management, I think he has a follow-up question. This question is very interesting. See, when you talk about reputation management, it is only an image that you create in the eyes of external and internal stakeholders. Please keep this in mind. Now, if I'm all the time hell-bent upon creating that image, and I'm not true to myself, my moral compass does not guide me, I've lost the bus. I've missed the bus. At the end of the day, I should be able to look at my eyes, do the mirror test. There's also the pillow test. If you can sleep on a absolutely relaxed pillow at night, you've taken the right step.
Just a follow-up to that, ma'am. This comfort in sleeping or to looking in the mirror might arise out of my lack of knowledge. I might be thinking that I've done the right thing. I might sleep peacefully after that, but that might be because I don't have the suppose feedback of say my colleague. If
Then you can't be in the leadership position. It requires knowledge. It requires knowledge.
so if there is
Because
lack of
no,
feedback,
no,
then
feedback.
I might think that I'm right. I might look myself very happily in the mirror.
But then you should have the humility to listen to the people who come to you and talk to you. So leadership is not simple. It's not simple. There are a whole pile of things that are involved. A person who would be at the helm of affairs is expected to have knowledge, is expected to have wisdom, is expected to be courageous, is expected to be truthful. And here we are talking about, Sun Tzu's rubric, and we take a look at Bhishma only has one, Karn only has one, Kunti has only two. So what we're actually talking about is a combination of all those things within a leader. It's not simple being a leadership position. Right? Challenges are huge, huge. Yes. Sure.
Can we take his question in the context of Yudhishthir? He, allowed Draupadi to be placed in that Chopat game, and they lost.
He did it.
He did it. So that was the reputation management, probably. He did it.
So he could do anything else besides that.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with reputation management.
And
It is, I always consider him to be a fool.
yeah,
जितना भी knowledge हो, धर्मराज है.
correct. And
But
this,
if you can't think, what are the things that you need to pawn at the time when you're giving? You don't know where to call it, to stop or put a stop to it. क्या फायदा knowledge का?
Correct.
क्या फायदा wisdom?
this is one of the prime questions put forward by, there is a version of Mahabharat by Kauravas, on which there is a nice play by Punit Issar and group. So they are posing these kind of questions that, there were three mistakes from Pandava's side also. Like Draupadi is calling Duryodhan, teasing Duryodhan and his father's disability. That challenge. Second is that what happened with Kunti and Draupadi, that incident. And third is this one. So these are the three questions Duryodhan is putting up to the Pandavas or to the, to reverse the villains and hero sides. And
See, there's Bhushan, it's very interesting. You can't reverse. Normally, what happens is history is written by the victors. So, Pandavas were successful, so we say, wow, Pandavas, everything that they did was just right. Kauravas lost. If tomorrow the Kauravas would have won, we would have said, Krishna ko nahi padhte, let's study Shakuni Mama.
correct.
Right. But I don't think that should be the guiding factor. What should be the guiding factor? And that's why I threw all those questions at you all. What we need to do is we need to think, we need to mull over those questions and see what is the right answer. It's not necessary that everyone will have the same answer. People will have different answers, different perspectives. Everyone would have a different moral compass. So, there were so many mistakes of the Pandavas. You've gotten on the wrong foot. Otherwise, I could have counted all those mistakes. Pandavas also, by jolly, made a lot of mistakes. I think the first mistake that was made was Kunti not owning Karn. Probably if she would have owned him, then all this would not have arisen. Second mistake by Pandavas. Kundi, without looking back, she says, whatever you've got, share it amongst yourselves. But that was a wisdom. That was a wisdom, but that's a mistake. Right? So then, of course, अभी लक्ष्य ग्रह पे तो पहुंचे ही नहीं है. The mistakes इन्होंने भी कोई कम नहीं किए हैं. If you have a phrase in Hindi, कोई भी दूध का धुला नहीं. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say. That is, no one is absolutely pure like your Ramji. Krishna is not pure. He is a strategist. He knows, how should he be proceeding. He is a hardcore pragmatic person. So Krishna is no way can we say that he's perfect. With the baad mein he became a god. He's very human like you and me, but he has a vision. He can see through it. You know, he goes and he goes to this place where the Kauravas are staying, and he goes and he tells Duryodhan, yeah, I'll give them their 5 villages, they're asking for it. Duryodhan says not even a needle point of territory. And that's the time when Krishna knows the war will start. He goes to Karn. He says, you know, you are Kunti's son. If you get married, you become the king, being the eldest. You also get Draupadi. So in Mahabharata, and that's one of the reasons why I started by saying it's an adharmic text. What lessons can we learn? So the lessons are the challenges that each person faces in life. It's not going to happen that, you know, you have lost your land to your cousins. But what is important for us to consider is the envy, the jealousy, the desire to take revenge. When you go and you tell a person, hey, you come and you join, so you will get all this, you know, providing, beguiling the other person, giving more and more, you know, what we refer to as greed to the other person. Is that right? No, it's not. But it's all put together in the form of an interesting narrative so that we don't forget. Right? Okay, next question.
Yeah, I think I might see one red hand.
Have presented in your life, dharma is leadership. So when there was a ploy to kill Dronacharya by saying the line, Ashwatthama is killed.
Is dead.
And is dead.
Ashwatthama is dead. Didn't say kill
Ashwatthama
her. Ashwatthama is dead.
So would you say eliminating Dronacharya was equated with the line that it is a leadership skill?
No, no. I would not say it's a leadership skill. It's being pragmatic. That's what we're talking about. The uncertainties, what we're doing if you're doing away with uncertainties in the world. So you can't you can't equate. You can't say Dronacharya being dead or your teacher being dead. No, we're not talking about that. What do you extrapolate and how do you extrapolate and take it further? That's important. Okay. I think, sir, you have a question.
Ma'am, we hope you have a time to continue.
Yeah, we'll do it
Okay.
for another 10 to 15
Okay.
minutes and
Okay.
then
One question from there.
Yeah, I have one question from the last slide. Last slide we have said there are 2 leaders. But I want to ask, what do you mean by that? Basically, the trait basically you told in the leadership adhere to that or adhere to leadership as a absolute.
that is an absolute concept, not what I have told, but your moral compass.
Now, my second question is about the person's moral compass. It gets built by the society, gets built by the knowledge here together. It gets built by the basically the person here. Okay. So now when we talk about moral compass, it is different for now when the moral your moral compass is not matching with the thing you are doing. Okay, or it's not matching with the environment. What to do then?
You have an exit card. Flash your exit card and move out. It's as simple as that. Your moral compass can also be developed by a lot of reading, by a lot of introspection. If you don't read, if you don't introspect, if you don't reflect, your moral compass will really not direct you in the right way. So reflection is something which is very important. As you keep going through life, you know, remember, all your experiences will help you move in the right direction. But what you do is, if you say, yeah, that is an experience, you put it back. There's another experience, you put it back. Take time off, review your experiences, and they will provide the right kind of direction. And this moral compass, on many occasions, is also formed because of the ethical framework provided by society.
That's the question. What is right? So the right and wrong will change based on the circumstances and the time we are living. Maybe it will like consume wrong or right. The data you like that. But then if you compare who was more right or what I'm doing is actually right, how will you proceed in that?
There's nothing like absolute truth.
But what you are doing is actually right. You have said like
Because
if you are
if
able
you
to
remember, there was something, and this is what we also talk to our students. What is important is for you to be able to decide what is right and what is wrong, you need to develop a perspective. And when we say you need to develop a perspective, everyone has a perspective on how you need to approach issues, how you need to move ahead with your understanding of the right and the wrong. If you can develop that perspective, it should not be problematic for you in making a choice and saying this is right or this is not right. It's very important for you to also have a mentor, because I can see you can be more than 30, you could be somewhere between 25 or 26. Am I right? Okay. So if you're in that age, it's going to be very difficult for you to take a decision which you think would be right or which you think would be wrong. Have a mentor like Krishna was there for Arjun. And this mentor will help you find your way, will not direct you on the right way. Everyone has to find their own way.
consider the question like you can find Sakini also.
You can find Shakuni also. They ab nahi milenge. Shakuni is dead and gone. It's only Ashwatthama that you can find on the Himalayas. Right?
Thank you.
So, ma'am, we'll take three more questions, one from Navinder, Namit, and one YouTube question. Navinder, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, madam, for this wonderful Vyakhyaan. So my question is what? It's just a comment, not a question. It's related to one other quality of leadership. This is rising above the self-interest. For example, if you look at rising above the self-interest. For example, if you look at Sardar Patel or Mahatma Gandhi or Bhagat Singh, even Vikram Sarabhai, I mean, they thought about the greater good of the people. So that is one thing.
Brilliant.
What your
point.
comment?
And that's why we remember Krishna and we make a mockery of Shakuni.
Yeah.
You need to rise above. He was still caught up in that revenge factor which his father had asked him to take. But Krishna was not caught up in anything. That's a brilliant point.
Yeah, so in that context, the self-interest context, if you look at this Ukraine war, so I mean, let's discuss it from the non-political way, I mean, just for the discussion purpose. So, for example, I mean, Russia has all the control of hydrocarbon resources, and they are pride, and they know countries depend on them. And then some country want to sell their weapons. So self-interest, which is running the war, actually, it's going on. But if you look at from the humanity point of view, there are so many people getting killed. Then there was a photo in Time magazine. So a pregnant woman was hit by a rocket launcher, and then she was on deathbed, and she died after a week. So if you look from that perspective, and it's human right violations of the highest order are going on. How do we? I mean, the world. What should the world?
It's not leadership at all. That's
Yeah. So,
only a
what
thirst-
lesson the world should take from Mahabharat and then there
That's only a thirst for power, right? If you remember, I did cite that quote where I said, people first, mission always. That's not leadership. History is not really going to look at Russia in the right kind of way, because what they have focused on is only the mission always. But what's happened to the people? So a true leader is one who's able to, show these leadership qualities. And the leadership qualities come when you have relationship orientation. When you're able to manage the people, and probably that's one of the reasons why we remember Mahatma Gandhi even to this day. If it was just task oriented, I don't know that I'm qualified to make a statement of that kind, but Bhagat Singh was more task oriented. But Gandhiji later on, whatever happened, we are not going to get into that. At the time of partition and all that, when we got our freedom back, we'll not get into that. But in the initial phase, while the task orientation was there, there was also a very, very high degree of relationship orientation. And probably that's one of the reasons why, he's acknowledged as the father of a nation. You have all these people like Barack Obama, Nelson Mandela, all these people talking about him being a role model. See, that's.
Hello, ma'am. I was just wondering that in your narrative, the way you present it, instead of superimposing Sun Tzu's art of war, you had taken the other art of war and superimposed on Machiavelli's art of war and superimposed on Mahabharat. Which one, offhand, if you could say, would have been?
Machiavelli only propounds that the ends justify the means. He doesn't have any rubric like Sun Tzu had. And whenever we talk about Machiavelli, his is you do whatever you want to do. At the end of it, if you've got the good trade, everything is justified. Now, how really do you think you would have been able to superimpose ends justify means? Because here, while we are talking about it, we said means justify ends and ends justify means. Means are as important as ends. We took a look at that, and that was also a line that I put in the lesson that we have learned. So I'm really not sure how the concepts which were propagated by Machiavelli would have been applicable. To a certain extent, you would have said Chanakya, who's also referred to as the Indian Machiavelli, right? To what extent? But then, Chanakya talks about Chanakya Niti, and I don't think it is anywhere close to Krishna. Right? So that has more of a political motive, but this is also people oriented, right? It is relative oriented, and there it is more it would just not hold. Machiavelli to bilkul nahi karega, but if you want to a certain extent, we could apply the principles, that Chanakya talks about in his Chanakya Niti to this. But then again, it's not going to be a one-to-one correspondence. But that's a very interesting thought that you brought to me. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one question from YouTube from Professor Hariom Vats. What is REBT model and how does it relate to our day-to-day activities?
RBT model?
REBT. Leadership model shown.
The leadership, that is, which model are you talking about? Which model? REBT, this is, there's so many models that I showed. Yeah. I don't know whether anyone had a title of that kind, REBT model, unless he's talking about the treat model. Is he talking about that one?
He didn't mention any further this thing.
One sec. No, I think this is principled pragmatism. This is he talking about this model? Because we have treat.
Yeah, this is
Where
the
is REBT?
assessment of REBT models. In the caption, it is written.
Automatic cycle of behavior.
An empirical assessment of REBT models.
Okay, REBT model. So what is he asking? What is the question?
The question is that what is this model and how does it relate to our day-to-day activities?
This model is a very interesting model because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a look at behavior and the pattern of behavior of people. So normally what happens is we have in that cyclical pattern shared with you as to how things happen, right? And how negativity can be stalled, because this is in relation to Ashwatthama. So let me first take you to the context and then I'll come back over here. See, there are certain external events that happen which shape our thoughts. It could be, I want to be a king, I want to be a general, and I'm really good at warfare, I'm really good at this. So these external events are going to shape my thoughts. And I start thinking, I'm cat's whiskers. From my thoughts, my emotions will arise. Because anything that I'm thinking always gets translated into emotions. So I feel elated, I feel depressed, or I feel very happy, or I feel very sad. And this leads to certain actions. The actions could be positive, the actions could be negative. Now, this, what I've been talking about, is very, very positive. But what happens in our daily life if we start? There are certain external events which bog us down. It happens most of the time. It happens most of the time in organizations when you feel you've not got your lot what you deserved. It may give negative thoughts, but when you have these negative thoughts before that, there's a breakpoint one which you need to follow. And that is, you need to be mindful of the situation. You need to carry on a rational inquiry as to why this really happened. Because thoughts can be rational, irrational. If you don't control your thoughts at a particular moment, negative emotions are going to arise, which could lead to a lot of negativity. So that's the break point one. Then we get on to emotions, right? And from there, if I have negative emotions, my actions also become very negative. And that's the time where I need to have some kind of action regulation. You said this to me, you did this to me. I am not positively inclined towards you, and just wait. I'm just waiting for an opportunity to hit out to you or hit out at you. No, that's the time when you also need to think about forgiveness. And that is what leadership is all about. So, in this automatic cycle of behavior, feed in positivity. You know, you try to feed in positivity, but it so happens that there's negativity all around. So if there's negativity, remember, keep rationally looking at it and do indulge in forgiveness. Does it answer the question, Roshad?
Suppose. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. And we are now coming close to our today's Vyakhyaan. Let us give a huge round of applause to the speaker.
Pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you.
Ma'am, please. And before we propose vote of thanks, we would like to give a token of our appreciation to the speaker, Professor Kaul. And for that, I would like to request Jyoti to help and Dr. Bardwaj to kindly offer the memento to Professor Asha Kaul. Okay, so let me do the pleasant duty of proposing vote of thanks for today's Vyakhyaan. We thank our Director, Dean, for their continuous encouragement and support for continuing this Vyakhyaan Series 2.0. I would like to mention special thanks to Professor Mr. Anil Kumar for initial contacts with Professor Kaul and then Professor Shubhavati Goswami for carrying it forward to this level. I would like to thank our Vyakhyaan committee for all their kind help and support, especially the chair, co-chair, and all the members. I would like to thank our CNIT team for their support in streaming this Vyakhyaan live. And last but not the least, our audience, live as well as in the Kara Ramanathan Auditorium. Thank you all. We see you again next month with another Vyakhyaan. And let us have a cup of tea outside and disperse. Thank you.